Greetings, programmers. Busted Thumbs back again to work on our Music Player Studio project. Learn a little bit more about drawing, and in this case, we're going to switch over to how Scratch does music. All right, so we've drawn our piano now, and it's something we're going to get back to. But I wanted to show you a little bit about how Scratch is able to play sounds in music. I'm going to create a new sprite in order to do this, and this sprite we don't need any particularly fancy thing inside the sprite. We're not even going to look at this sprite. It's going to all be about playing music. So we're going to go ahead and name this sprite our music player, just like that. And the only thing it's really going to do in terms of looks is to make sure that when the green flag is clicked, that it doesn't show itself. It's gonna hide. I'm going to show you now, going over to the sound tab, the things that you can do. You can play a lot of different sounds that are kind of built into Scratch. Um, you can record some from a mic. You can bring them in from all over the place. This sound tab over here actually allows you to go ahead and listen to the sound that's got this default one, that weird pop sound that it's got there. But there's all sorts of other sounds inside of here that you can load from your own computer, or you can actually choose from this library. There's all sorts of strange ones in there. Birthday bells. So there you have it. All sorts of things that you can work with, but that's not what we're going to do. We're not going to work with the sounds on this particular sprite, the pre-recorded one. What we're going to do is we're going to work instead with the instruments that Scratch has built in. So we can get rid of that there, and we can look at this thing. This is what's more interesting to us. Of course, for both of those things, you can change the volume all you want, but more interesting to us is going to be this tempo thing and this play note thing. So you can set a tempo. The tempo is how quickly a beat happens in, right? And here it's saying that there are 60 BPMs, and BPM stands for beats per minute. If there's 60 beats per minute, that means there's 60 seconds in a minute, so you're going to get one beat every second. And you can see up here that the Scratch has a little thing for playing a note, and it says for how many beats it should be. And this one says half a beat, and you can see that half a beat corresponds to 60 beats per minute, which is 1 per second, which means it's going to play this note for half a second, basically, if this is what we set it to. So I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and do that. And you can see that this note, when we pop that down, as I showed before, actually just shows you a keyboard, and it's saying it's going to play middle C for 1/2 of a beat, half of a second in this case. Okay. The other interesting thing here is that there's an instrument that goes along with this. So we could set the instrument in front of these, and it's a number 1, but those numbers correspond to a whole bunch of different things you can work with. We want it to be a cello, and we hit play. It played a cello-y sound. If you wanted to be an electric piano, it plays more of an electric piano sound. And these play notes for a certain amount of time, they block on that while they're playing that and wait till they go on to the next one. So if we wanted to play a little melody, we could go ahead and chain a bunch of these together. So if I just do a bunch of these, I can put in what we know as Twinkle Twinkle Little Star pretty easily here. So Twinkle Twinkle Little Star does 2 notes on middle C, then 2 notes at G, one note above G at A. It does that, actually 2 of those, come to think of it. So another one at A, and then another one back at that G again. And this one has to last twice as long as the others. So if I now hit play, sounds a lot like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It's kind of simplistic, but that's how it's done. That's how Scratch plays them. The interesting thing about this is that the tempo and the instrument are related to that particular that sprite. So if I were to do this again in another music player sprite, I could set the instrument to a different number, and it would change it for that sprite as it plays, right? So I could have one music player clone playing in electric piano, and I could have another one playing in choir or whatever it happens to be. And that's just me double clicking. When you double click on something, it goes ahead and runs it. So there you go. You've got Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. That's the melody for Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Just the first few beats of it. Now, just like when we animate something, sometimes you want it to look like it's doing one thing and you know, switching the costumes around while it's moving. So you can make it so that these things happen at the same time using events if we wanted to. So for instance, if I said broadcast, and I set a new message to play Twinkle Twinkle. Right, I make that a message. Then when I say when I receive play Twinkle Twinkle, let's just go ahead and the same sprite's always going to have the same thing, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Well, I could do another one over here. It says when I receive play Twinkle Twinkle. Kind of do some accompaniment to it. So this here is what we call the melody. It's the tune that you sing when you do Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. But we could do a little thing that plays a little bit of a melody along with it. So here's kind of a simple way of doing a melody. This is just going to play down an octave lower here. Right? So we got a little, I mean, I only made that half, so I could do that again. You had the first half with the accompaniment and the second half without. Right? So you got a little accompaniment that goes along with it. So that's basically what we want to do in our music player, is to have a player that listens, that can play a bunch of different songs with a bunch of different instruments. And as we do that, we're going to have that music show up on the screen by showing which keys on the piano it presses, for instance. Okay, so we can do that pretty easily, play little songs like that. The trick is that we're going to want to have a number of music players that reads from a lot of different notes. I don't want to have to for every song that I ever do have to drag over every single note over here. It's going to be kind of hard for me to do. What I'd like to do instead is just to say, here's a representation of the music in just a big string, some text that says which note and which measure it's in and how long it should play and all of that. And then have my sprite go ahead and read from that and start doing all the playing for me. Okay, so for instance, what I'm talking about here is, what if instead of doing this over and over again, I instead made a variable. And all of this is going to be kind of temporary because we're going to make a more permanent way of doing this. But if I said, this is my melody variable, for instance, and I go ahead and at the very beginning here, when we initialize the variables, I'm going to set that melody to something that looks a little bit more like this. It's going to look like 60, 0.5, and then it's going to look like 60, 0.5, and maybe here I'll make it look a little bit different. So it separates those two, and then it's 67, 0.5, 67, 0.5, then what is it, 69, 0.5, 69, 0.5, 67, 0.5. Okay, oh, and it's actually 1.0 in this case. Okay, So what am I doing here? What I took all of that stuff that's inside of that little twinkle twinkle right there, and I put it inside of one variable. So what we need to do then in order to read this, to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star now, is to actually read where we should be inside of this variable that I have for the melody, and just start reading off the notes as they come. So basically what I would need to do that is to make another little variable. I'll call that the melody offset. Okay, and I need a variable for my note, and I'll need a variable for my duration. Okay, and so what this guy's going to do here, instead of having all those together, he's just going to simply read from this melody. So his job is to repeat and basically the number of times he needs to repeat is the length of this divided by how many characters each one of these take up. And just to make it easier, I'll put a little semicolon at the end so that they're always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters long. So we're going to repeat the length of melody, and it's actually going to be the length of melody divided by 7. So go ahead and grab that melody variable there, pop her in right side there. We don't need to see any of these. And we are going to have to set our little offset, make sure it's set to 0 to begin with. Melody offset 0. Now our duration, when we're doing this, the duration is going to be the first 2 characters of that, which in Sprite is done this way. You go ahead and grab, let's go set the note, which is what we're actually looking at, to the join of 2 things. It is the join of the letter of the 2 letters from melody. Join 2 letters from melody. And the letters that we're going to find are going to be this offset. For the original one, it's going to be our offset. Right. Oh, and actually, because Scratch starts at 1, let's go ahead and start at 1 instead of 0. Scratch counts by 1, even though I normally count by 0. It's going to be, and this one is going to be the melody offset plus 1. And then at the very end, we're going to change our melody offset by 7. We said it's going to be the length of all of this. And we're going to set our duration in a very similar fashion. In this case, we do need one additional plus, and I might just throw this plus in just to make everything consistent here. That's the melody offset plus 0. And this one is the melody offset. Okay, so that's plus 0 is the 6, plus 1 is the 0. The comma is plus 2. So the next letter that we want to work with is 3. And this one is 4. And unfortunately, we needed 3 characters in order to do that one. So we're actually going to need to join one more time. Oh, and we didn't use letter. This should have been letter. Not join, that should be. Sorry, let's go ahead and get rid of this one because that was so wrong. That is melody. So what we're doing is we're joining letter 0 and letter 1 of melody to make the note. And we do need to join a third one for this one. duplicate that. There. So as we said, this one should be not 2 because 2 is the comma, but 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so that gives us the note and the duration. So we simply need to now play that, which is in our sounds. Go ahead and play the note for the duration. Now that looks a lot more complicated, and it, you know, for Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, the first 6 notes, it's probably unnecessary. But if we had a song that was hundreds or thousands of beats long, then this would definitely speed things up. So as you can see, it's doing it. When I double click on that, it's playing that melody based on this variable that's inside here. And that's exactly what we want to do. This is the concept that we're going to work with as we make a kind of full-featured music player. We're going to do a whole lot more with this, and I'm going to make this actually quite a bit more complicated because it needs a lot more than that if we're going to make things a little bit longer. But this is the concept. We take the basic thing that you can do just by dragging in one note at a time, and instead we turn it into one big variable that we're able to work with to play big songs together. Okay, so that's the basic introduction to the music that we're going to work with, and in the future ones we'll do a whole lot more with it. I hope this is interesting to you. It's going to be able to do a lot of really cool things by the time we're done. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.